And we're back with day 33 of Survivor 46 and 46. Adam Klein just won Survivor Millennials versus Gen X, a season that it's another one of those seasons where every time I do a rewatch, I try to convince myself that it's not as good as people make it out to be. I don't know why I want to hate this season so much, but I can't. And every time I watch, it's like, nope, this is actually just very good. Today we are joined by Erica. Erica, just to start off with this, with the same question I start with everyone. What was your first experience watching this season? And has your opinions of the season changed throughout any further rewatches that you've done?
Okay, so I started watching Survivor in 2019, so I have not been following the whole entire time. And I started watching seasons out of order because I would just fall in love with the player and want to see all of the seasons that they played. And that is what brought me to Game Changers, the season that comes right after. And that's where I fell in love with Michaela. So then I had to go backwards and watch Millennials versus Gen X. So that was my impetus for watching that, because I was just watching in random order. And I loved it. I fell in love with the season immediately. I was going through the seasons at a pretty rapid pace due to the pandemic and everything. So I actually hadn't revisited this particular season until you told me about this podcast. And I was like, okay, great. Well, that gives me a chance to rewatch a season that made a really good impression on me the first time I watched it. And I rewatched it again for the first time preparing for this, and it left with a really good impression again, and I think even better the second time watching. Yeah, I can't wait to get into it.
So, and I will say that the first time I watched the season, I really enjoyed it. And I think it was in my top 10 or top 15 at that point. And then every time I watched it after that, until I got to 42 and 42, it was just like, all right, I get it. And I kind of put it in the same category as China, where it's like, okay, I get why this is good. And I don't think it's bad. And I feel like it's one of those people overhype it to the point where I want to dislike it because I don't like the fact that people want to shove it down our throats. It's the same thing with like Kageyana or anything like that. But every time I do a rewatch, it's at a point where I can't hate it because it is so fun, despite some very big flaws that I see with everything that's going on in the season. And the biggest one, and I think it was my first tweet that I put out today, was the fact that out of all of the very annoying themes that they decided to go with, basically past fans versus favorites 2, they decided on Millennials versus Gen X, and they leaned so heavily into this theme that the pre-merge becomes very annoying for large parts of it, because you can tell the production's like, hey, make sure you bring up the fact that millennials are like stupid, or that Gen Xers are this and that, and it's like, no one talks like this ever. No one just sits around saying, oh, that's the problem with millennials. I mean, I guess millennials is an exception because people hate millennials forever. But the most telling one is the tribal, where Jeff asks, who types YOU and who types you? And I'm just like, I haven't typed you since I was in high school, because it's like, as an adult, as a millennial adult, I type YOU because that is proper grammar. I don't shorten that word. But they're just trying so hard to cause this very large divide between the two groups. What did you think about this theme this season? Do you think there was a better way of going about this? Do you think they were kind of grasping at straws? Like, what are your thoughts on it as a whole?
So I do think the premise is very fun. I think it got very heavy-handed and very corny. This is when Survivor started getting a little bit corny with how hard they were pushing the themes, and this one in particular was just... Millennials and Gen X are not that different. Like, we're real, like, it was very, like, almost, it was just very forced. Like, look how different these two groups of people are. And it's...
Yeah, the only person I bought was, oh man, and it's been a long day. Who was the oldest guy on the Gen X tribe?
Was it Paul?
Paulie, yeah, Paul. He's the only one that I bought was actually like this, like actually hates millennials. Everyone else, I felt like everyone they were just kind of saying things. Paulie, just because he was the oldest Gen X person, makes him closer to a boomer than a lot of the younger Gen X folks, like Ken. And so when he's saying, "Oh yeah, I type why I don't text or anything like that," it's like I believe that. I believe you don't text. When
Yeah.
Sunday says, "Yeah, I do text," like, yes, I can believe that because you're a younger Gen X person. My parents are Gen Xers, and they text.
Like,
They,
this particular cast skews very young. Even the Gen Xers are not particular. Like the youngest one was Ken, who was I
no,
think 33. That's
yeah, he was
pretty
just barely
young. It's not
made the
that
cut.
different from some of the older millennials that were
Yeah,
playing. Like the age gap is not very big for most of them.
it, and I think that's another one of the reasons that I always wanted shit on the season in my head. Excuse me, is the fact that the theme is just so overly forced and so overly just it comes off as so corny when these people talk about this. Oh, we the second place trophies spiel that everyone always talks about, and it's like, well, one, y'all gave us the trophies, but two,
It wasn't our idea.
yeah, but two, Gen Xers got the same shit from Boomers, and that's what Jeff was. Jeff at the beginning of the season says, "Oh, the Gen Xers, y'all were the new hip, like doing things different crowd, and now it's the Millennials, and they're like, yeah, but we have to work for it." It's like I it's aggravating. And like I said, it just kind of plagues a lot of the pre-merge. Watching Paul during the fake swap, where Paul's talking to I think Taylor and somebody else. Maybe it was I don't remember, but he goes, "Oh yeah, I do a lot of music you probably never heard," and it's like, why? Spotify exists at this point. YouTube exists at this point. Like, do you think that they just don't know any of this music because you're so old, you're so ancient that these kids have never heard of ZZ Top or anything like that?
Like we also have parents who listen to music and like cousins, uncles, aunts. Like we didn't
Yeah.
grow up in the woods. Like we heard music.
We know things. And the other big issue I have with the pre-merge is what this comment says. The all Figgy Taylor of it all, Michelle act when nowhere? What? And we had too many characters who get to get the purple edit. Okay, so Figtails for me, and I was kind of tongue-in-cheek when I tweeted this out earlier, how Figtails is probably the fourth worst thing to happen in Survivor 3 seasons. But I thought about it, and it's like, no, that's actually the truth. Figtails annoys the shit out of me pre-merge. One, because their name is Figtails, which is the worst. Like, Romber's corny, but, like, I like them, so it's fine. Figtails is stupid, and...
But if you can do that with your two names, that kind of a pun, you have to go for it. I support it. I support the name of Figtails.
Do you support Figtails as a duo?
No, but I will push back a little bit because as a millennial rewatching Millennials versus Gen X, something that is fun about it is kind of the nostalgia of this was 7 years ago at this point, and millennials were already young. They skewed pretty young. So just the kind of nostalgia of watching this showmance that was so unhinged and like red flags all over it, not good gameplay, but they weren't really thinking that deeply about it. It's kind of funny and nostalgic to rewatch and relive that era of my life as a millennial. Like it is kind of fun to me. Like I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it rewatching it.
Fair.
I do think it was terrible gameplay, which is also kind of funny, like to watch.
And they're both getting clocked by everyone. Like, no, they're not trying to hide it. They're not.
No.
They are admitting that they are a duo and that they're in this alliance with Jay specifically. And Jay even has a confessional where he's like, "Yeah, this is bad. You guys are being too open with this." Michaela gets pissed off. One of our first Michaela moments in the season is just her calling them out at camp. I'm like, I love this woman because she's not about the bullshit. She's not about the
She's
bullshit.
so funny. She has some of the best moments in the pre-merge phase.
Pre-merge,
Like,
sadly, because she doesn't make it past it, and we're gonna talk all about Michaela just as a character in that blind side. But I feel like the Millennials tribe is the more compelling tribe. Starting off, like going into the pre-swap, I feel like there's a lot more of the story is being handled over there. On the Gen X side, it's just David being neurotic. It's David being neurotic. That's really it. Like that's really all there is to it. Like
yeah.
a lot of the votes are still really centered around David. And it leads to bleh. It just we get the idol play, which is cute and fun.
That was kind of a
Jess
highlight to
face
me
is
rewatching
amazing.
this season. Again, was that idol play in the pre-merge phase by David. David is a surprising character. Like, I do really enjoy that type of player who transforms before our eyes. It was a joy to rewatch David, and kind of starting at that moment with that idol play. I forgot all about that until I rewatched it.
Yeah, it's and I guess this is more of a negative and positive I have for the season. Everyone that listens to this knows how I feel about big moves and resumes and all of this fake stuff that you don't actually need. And we're going to talk all about how I hate Will Wall later, but I feel like it starts very early this season with people just trying to make all these crazy moves for the sake of making crazy moves. And some of them work and some of them don't. I think the reason that David is clocked so early as a threat, even though like from episode 1, he's looked at as, okay, he's a shrimp and all that. By episode 3, I believe, David is looked at as a threat. And it's because he pulled this big ass move trying to save Jess, which cool, like because it builds trust. I get it. I absolutely get it. But then we get in a situation as the game continues where people keep on doing these big moves, and we have these trust clusters. Shout out Hannah Shapiro. We have these trust clusters, and every single person gets picked off that is doing these crazy moves. So I want to ask you, just talking about David as the character as a whole, but I guess starting back with the Jess idol play. What did you think of David 1.0? I kept forgetting that he played again after this, but what did you think of David 1.0?
I really enjoyed David as a character and watching him transform. And I think something David brings to this cast is I feel like it's around this era where Survivor started trying to lean into more relatable characters rather than trying to produce like celebrity type of characters. I like that more. Like when I revisit the old school seasons, there was a lot of recruitment in the casting. There was a lot of mm, you know, celebrity type of folks who wanted to be. And I enjoy the turn they made at a certain point around the 30s, around this era. And David is like one of my favorite characters that shows that. And there are several on this particular season. I feel like that's what that's one of the things that brings me so much joy about this season is characters like David, who are truly just relatable, regular, schmegular folks like I am. Like,
Yeah, you start to really see, and this is something as far as at this point they're casting super fans and they're also casting, they're still doing the recruitment thing, and the problem is when the recruits figure out that someone's a super fan, they immediately target them as we need to get rid of them because they've watched the show before, which is weird, but it's not foul for them to go after a super fan because you're always looking for reasons to vote out people anyway. I think like you said with David this season, he is the everyman. Even though he's a Hollywood writer, he's the everyman because of him being neurotic. And I think that's when the first time I watched this season, obviously I latched on to David very early. I got it. I got, a lot of his paranoia. I understood a lot of what he was doing. And like you see the character growth happen throughout the season, and the fact that he continues to make it so far throughout the season, I think that's a great story. in a season full of narrators, because this season has a lot of great narrators, David still probably is the best. And it's not like it's a very small margin between him and everybody else, but like because of him being that super fan and him starting as this shrimp and turning into not only a social strategic threat but a challenge threat with Ken still out there. I feel like that's a testament to David as the character, and I think that on the female side of that, we talk about my all-time Survivor crush, Hannah Shapiro, who I loved probably more this time than I've ever loved her ever rewatching this season, because I've always said, oh yeah, Hannah deserved a couple of votes or whatever. This time around, I'm like, maybe I'm wrong and Hannah actually wins, and I've just convinced myself for years that Adam actually wins because I'm stupid, and she still loses this time. But I felt like her final tribal was great. I feel like a lot of like her rationale for the moves that Adam kept trying to call her out for made sense. I feel like she also grew as a character from the Mari vote, where she's taking forever trying to vote and trying to talk to Zeke and Adam on the beach, and they are just not having it. And she just, the only negative Hannah moment, even though I loved it, is her trying to talk to Zeke on the beach, and he's just like, Hannah, please get away from me. I'm biased, so I'm not going to go on my big Hannah tangent, but
do it.
I probably will at some point. What are your thoughts on Hannah?
I love Hannah for the same reasons that I was just talking about David. I mean, she's so relatable to me, like, and it's just so fun to see her really be confident and like, I'm sorry, I was reading the comments. It's really, it's just really fun to like see her really own her game and be confident, despite feeling anxious and neurotic. It's just a nice, relatable player. And I also agree with your point about how well she did at the final tribal council. I was just rewatching it today, and I don't think it was a sort of tribal council where the winner had just a very dominant speech and they just slayed every single question top to bottom. No, Hannah really held her own. Like I would have felt compelled to really think about voting for Hannah if I had been on the jury. Ken, meh. We don't have to talk about that right now. But Hannah is a really fun player to watch. Love her. Yeah, this can be a Hannah fan club stream for right now.
Everyone knows my feelings on Hannah. I'm not going to turn this into a Hannah simp fest, but
no, dude, that's why I chose this season to come on the pod for, because I want to. I
will say this. I don't believe in love at first sight, but when I saw the cast for this season, I'm like, I think I love this woman. No, I think that Hannah. There are moments this season that I forgot about. Like she wanted to get Sunday out, and her reasoning behind wanting to get Sunday out made sense. Her reason for keeping David, even though yes, in the moment I probably would have felt like, yeah, it's probably a bad move. Her reasoning behind it made so much sense. Adam saying at the, I think it was around the rock draw, Adam has a confessional where he's like, yeah, I'm going to continue to let Hannah be the figurehead of our duo. And it's like, yes, okay, I forgot about that confessional, but he is admitting that Hannah is who, optics-wise, everyone is looking at as the one running this duo. And it is a duo. Like, we don't really hear about it much, but they are the duo. We've got a fair few duos in the season, and that is the one. But Adam says, yeah, Hannah is the figurehead, and people are going to look at her as neurotic, which they do. And I think that that's one of the reasons that may cost her in the end, is the fact that optics-wise, people always saw her reacting in a certain type of way that made them think, oh, she doesn't know what's going on. The fact that Adam and Brett are both continuing to say, oh yeah, Hannah's making a stupid move by keeping David, I think that can sway a jury to thinking, oh well, Hannah's just dumb then because she kept David. In that situation, at that final 5 vote, um, do you understand her rationale? Would you have made the same move, or would you have gone the way of let's just get rid of David now and this is focus on final 4?
I do think getting David out ASAP would have been, because I do think everyone was correct that David would have been a really big threat to win in the end. Everyone who was on the side of getting David out, I was rooting for. I was like, yeah, you guys have to do. So that's where I land. As much as I love David, I think I was surprised he lasted as long as he did, considering how I would
He
have
was
clocked him
clocked
as
at
a
the
threat.
merge.
I would have clocked him
Yeah,
as a threat.
yeah, he was at the merge. It was basically David versus Zeke the entire merge until Zeke went home, and then David probably should have been next, and he wasn't next because everyone was focused on, Jay and all these other people. And Jay did have his people on the jury, so I do understand that. And Brett did have his people on the jury, so I understand that.
There were a lot of threats on the table.
Yes, and that
So
is a testament to the season and the gameplay with it, despite the fact that I do hate once again, going this comment, the big moves era. I hate the big moves era. I think it is, a very overrated style of play. Whereas there was a comment that I wanted to, and I can't find it. Oh yes, and I talked about this during Cambodia. How I always, in my head, I convinced myself that Will Wall started the whole resume stuff, and it was actually Tasha. But I can't hate Tasha. So, and I can hate Will Wall. I don't hate Will Wall. I can dislike Will Wall because he encapsulates my biggest qualm with the season outside of people leaning into the theme. It's the fact that hey, I've got to have a resume and I've got to make all these big moves, and if I don't do this, I can't win the game. When in reality, everyone that made a big move, like all the big moves in the game, got voted out. And Brett has one after, I think at final 6 or something like that. Brett is talking and he's like, you guys keep trying to do all this stuff. That's not going to have you sit at the end because everyone's going to vote you out next. Every single time. Zeke is the biggest game player of the season, probably. And Zeke's ass gets sent home pre-finale. And Will, he's I got to have my ring and this and that. And I'm not going to do my Will voice today because I hate him. I dislike him. I don't hate him. But Will goes on the jury after he makes a big move because now everyone sees him as a threat. See you later. The only time that a big move was pulled off that didn't bite someone in the ass was at Final Four because all Adam had to do was get rid of David at that point, and you could sit at the end. As someone who has both played live games and orgs and has done very well in both of them, what do you think of this whole mentality of the resume, the big moves, and all of that? What are your thoughts on that?
I am with you in the sense that I don't like the big move itis era. I hate to say this because I know some people love it. I'm not trying to yuck anyone's yum, but
I
there's
will.
something about leaning so heavily into strategy that I feel kind of cheapens the game of Survivor because it was meant to be a social experiment. That was the whole point of this game. And I think what makes it a little bit different from other reality competition shows is that these people are just on an island alone together. There's no hair and makeup. There's no calling home. There's nothing. Like, they're out there. So it's kind of a bummer when I feel like people are making big moves just for the sake of wanting to have something to say at Final Tribal Council that doesn't necessarily make the most sense. Like, I feel like people are trying to force Will I feel like is trying to force moves onto the resume when they don't necessarily make sense, and it's maybe okay just to lean back and not make every single move every single round and like make friends. That's kind of what's fun about watching Survivor. And what's fun about this season in particular is the genuine friendships that seem to
There are a lot
emerge.
of
So
people,
like
yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with sitting at the end and saying, yeah, I didn't control every single round. I don't have the longest resume here, but I got to know everyone. I made friends. I connected with people I wouldn't normally connect with. So the resume
It's overrated.
is
And
overrated in my opinion, but I feel like I'm in the minority on that at this point.
I mean,
So I'm not
I
trying to
am
yuck anyone's
too,
yum. I still love it. I still love the show, but
but that's why I'm so gung ho about it, because I'm in the minority. It's like, no, you guys are actually wrong. Like you are, because outside of Tony, you can't point to one winner in the history of the show that pulled off every single big move in the season. You can't do it. And even Tony didn't do every big move in Kagayan, but he was neurotic enough that it looked like he did. Comment: the edit is frustrating. Had people explain the Adam was doing more than it was on the show, but that is fan fiction. Yeah. Okay. So, and I do want to talk about the edit, because the edit in the 30s, I feel like is a big problem, and it's going to be a bigger problem tomorrow with Game Changers, where the Michaela vote in Game Changers to this day doesn't make any sense, because I feel, and I brought this up yesterday, I believe. I think this is a part of Survivor history where the producers are reading the internet and they see that fans can figure out what's going on, and they're trying so hard now to try to trick us, because they have to trick us. They can't know everything's going to happen. It's like, it's all right if we know what happens. We can still be surprised. The Eric vote in Micronesia is telegraphed. We know what's going to happen, and it's still one of the moments that every fan looks at as one of the best moments in the history of the show, even though we know what's going to happen. And I feel like, yes, the edit here, the edit as we move through the rest of the 30s is very frustrating, because they're trying to trick the audience, because they have to be smarter than the audience. And I've never understood that. You don't have to trick your audience. The audience we're not stupid to begin with. So like, but and I think there are moments this season where I feel like they are still trying to trick us. We can talk about the Michaela boot, where all episode it is telegraphed. It's going to be Sunday or Brett. And it's not until right before Tribal that, and in my head, I don't believe that it was a decision made right before Tribal. I don't buy that at all, that it was right before they had it out there. And it's like, oh yeah, all of this. Psych, it might be Michaela because of this. What did you think of the edit this season? Or just this era as a whole, but specifically this season. Do you agree that you feel like the editors were trying to trick us a lot of stuff, or do you feel like it was still fine?
I do. I do. I feel like Michaela. I felt blindsided with the Michaela vote. It happened so suddenly, and I hated that because she was my favorite player of the season, and the way she was so fun to watch, and she had such a from my perspective, they did trick us because she had such, in my opinion, a promising edit. Maybe I was just a little bit in love. I don't know, but
Yeah, very
she was a
promising.
very interesting and well-rounded player. She was good in challenges. She was funny. She clocked onto the strategy very quickly, as we saw with the shells and the. So to get Michaela ripped away from us, just
For the
like
merge, we don't
it
remember
was a
the merge.
weird timing, like 15 minutes left in the episode, and all of a sudden people are talking about voting out Michaela. Like, what? They don't need to do. I would rather be in the loop so I could be emotionally prepared, But yeah, they were leaning into the mystery, I guess, of it all, and it led
And
to some
once
heartbreaks
again,
on the.
we're going to get all into that specific vote, because it is probably the most iconic scene in the entire season. So I do want, we are going to go into it. I want to get through some of these comments. Hannah was messy emotionally, understandable why the jury didn't vote for her. Watching it this time, I did compare it sort of to Dawn and Lisa Welchel as far as finalists that played a great game that were looked at as overly emotional by a lot of people on the jury, because I felt like Dawn played very well in Caramel, and I felt like Lisa played very well in in the Philippines, and Monica Culpepper, I felt like played very well in Blood versus Water, and I felt like Hannah is probably better than all of them. And Hannah receives 0 votes. And I saw a comment earlier that said I was surprised that Will didn't give Hannah a vote so that Ken gets third. I agree with you. I'm surprised that no one voted because Ken. We're going to talk about Ken. I think I texted Erica earlier that I said he was like Andrew Savage or like Coach. He's like a mixture of Andrew Savage and Coach. Was like, yeah, he has a very high opinion of himself, but he's not leaning into the character like Coach. He's more of the Andrew Savage as far as like, I got to keep my morals here because, this is what I'm all about. It's like, no one cares, bro. Like, we're out here playing a game. For the longest time, I thought Hannah deserved to win the game. I mean, once again, I don't do the deserve thing, but if I were there, I would have voted for Hannah, but I also understood why Adam won. Obviously, I understand why Adam won, but I would have voted for Hannah, and she would have lost like 9-1. Once again, Hannah showed, yes. I mean, I'm glad there's a lot of Hannah people coming out. I appreciate y'all. Question: do you think Adam won because of sympathy, or at least won unanimously? No, I don't. I honestly don't. I think that optics-wise, and we just talked about with Hannah, I think optics-wise, people looked at Adam as, he's sitting here bearing Hannah's decision to keep David as long as she did. People already look at Hannah as a flipper because she's been flipping since the beginning of the game with the Mari vote. And people are kind of turned off to the emotional thing, which is weird, but whatever. Let them have that. I don't think, and I want to talk about this because I know there's a lot of people that don't like Adam's win because they think that he emotionally manipulated the jury. I don't buy that. I don't think that's what this comment is saying either. It's just more of I've met people in real life that think that is the case, and I've always called bullshit to that. What do you think about this specific question?
I actually agree with you. I don't think, and it was something that I had in mind when I was rewatching. I don't think he won purely out of sympathy at all by any stretch, because he waited a very long time to open up to anyone about what he was going through. I was trying to make sure I was paying attention so I could catch how late it was in the game when he brought it up, and it was very late. When he told
penultimate episode, I believe, him and Jay in the hammock. I think it's the penultimate episode.
Yeah, it was very, very late. So he had to make it that far to even. It's not like he was out there from day one manipulating people and begging for sympathy. He kept it very private for a very long time, even throughout receiving the loved ones letter, throughout the loved ones challenge, like reward. Like he didn't tell anyone that. So I think, and I also don't think it would be fair to expect someone to keep it 100% private and to never talk about it. Because that's just not human. That's not what Survivor's about. Can you imagine being on an island away from your mom and never bringing it up, not to a single person that you trust? And the way he brought it up with Jay was a very heartwarming moment. It was a very sweet moment of wholesome masculinity. I loved that moment. The tragedy is what I love, but the sharing, is.
I don't think anyone's gonna be like.
He had to make it that he made it very, very far without ever bringing it up. So I don't think he was pretty convincing as well in the finale. Hannah was also very convincing in the finale, but.
It's
maybe the unanimous aspect might be a little bit. Maybe there was one or two who were maybe just pushed a little bit in a certain direction because they already thought Adam was probably going to win anyway, and they maybe just. But I would have felt compelled to maybe really consider Hannah because she really held her own in the finale. So
absolutely.
Am I getting off track here? Sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you are or not. We're talking about Melissa Genetics. It's fun. Poor Jess. I felt bad for her. She saved Hannah. Yes, we get our most recent rock draw. Our largest rock draw, because the other one happened at final 4, and then the one in Blood versus Water happened in final 6, and this was not either one of those. And we do get, and it's I think I break down. I don't break down, but I tear up every time I watch this rock drama because Jess is saying, I don't want to go to Rocks, guys. I don't want to go to Rocks. And Hannah's like, please, please save me. She's like, I really don't want to go to Rocks.
The rewatch, knowing what happened, and like the sense of foreboding and doom that surrounded Jess as she's pleading to not go to Rocks was gut wrenching. It was way harder to rewatch than it was the first time around when I was surprised. Gut wrenching.
Oh, it's so sad. And like her dropping the rock and Adam tearing up and Hannah tearing up and they're all and Brett sitting in the background like we shouldn't have gone to Rocks. Shouldn't have gone to Rocks.
Jess deserves a second chance. I would love to see her back.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like
That was so effed up. I'm sorry, but I didn't want any of the people caught in the rock draw to go home either. So I don't know who I would have rooted for to go home. But the fact she went home without getting voted out was rough. Like
I would have rooted for Will to go home because I'm not a Will fan.
True.
But yeah, it's so sad. And like her final words, she breaks down again.
She has just the biggest eyes that are just so sad when she's crying, and she doesn't cry much on the show. Like there are a lot of people who are very emotional, and Jess doesn't really get emotional until that moment. Like it's so hard to see.
So, and I keep bringing this up now because all the Ponderosas are not on YouTube anymore. But the one thing I remember about the Millennials versus Gen X Ponderosa videos is the fact that her and Sunday didn't get along at Ponderosa.
Really?
What I remember is that her and Sunday didn't get along at Ponderosa.
That's news to me. Can you say more? Or no? Is it private? I don't know.
No, it's not private. It's just the YouTube videos aren't on YouTube anymore, so I can't, or the Ponderosas aren't on YouTube anymore, so I can't go back and watch and like figure out what they're. I just remember when I first watched the Ponderosa videos, I remember that was the one thing that stood out. It's like, wow, these two are not getting along, and that's weird.
That's interesting and news to me. I never had heard that.
We all know it was more important to be like big moves. Yeah, Wendell versus Dom. Yes. Once again, it's one of those situations like, and we're gonna talk about Ghost Island in a few days. Where 8 ties and the more social person wins. Because the social game it's social strategic, not strategic social, and the physical game doesn't matter unless you're Mike Holloway. It doesn't matter. So it's crazy that we're now in this era here where everyone have to make all these crazy moves just to get bit in the ass. This is what happens to every single person. It's every time. People like Survivor for different reasons doesn't mean one better than the other. Yes, okay, and I agree.
I endorse that, Gabe. I support that message.
So let's go to the third. I call him third place. He wasn't actually third place. He tied for second. But let's talk about Ken. Yes, I'm sure he's fun to look at for some folks. I get it. Whatever. Ken came off as super pretentious from the very beginning this season, and it didn't get any better throughout this. Like every time he would speak during Tribal, I'd like roll my eyes, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Why? And like that's why I said it, like it's like Coach or Andrew Savage, but closer to Andrew Savage, where it's like when Andrew Savage says things, I feel like he actually believes it. When Coach says it, I feel like he's playing a character.
No, I believe Coach believes what Coach is saying. That's not what I had to just interject that. But no, you go on.
But
drag Ken more.
When Ken talks, and it's like when him and Hannah are sitting on the beach and he's talking about the sun, and I'm just like, Hannah,
this is my least favorite Ken content because I feel like he leans into this Gen X. I'm older, wiser. These young folks don't know how to enjoy a sunset. It's like,
yeah, and Hannah.
If you look at Instagram, it's just us and posting pictures of sunsets. That's all we do.
I don't get it.
He leans into the corniness.
I wish Hannah had just been invested in like any other guy this season.
I will say loyalty is a strategy that I think is super valid, and it does always tickle my fancy when someone who's like, yeah, my biggest strategy is loyalty, makes it all the way to the end. And they do have a somewhat valid story to tell. He did cut Dave, who he promised to take to the end, and then was like, "Oh, it was the hardest moment of my life. I'm sorry." But I do appreciate loyalty as a strategy.
Me too.
And he did lean into that to a pretty heavy extent. He was not flip-flopping around. It's a little boring for the new era, like the new school era, but I don't mind that because I like the sort of social emotional aspect of the game.
I
He's
agree.
corny though. He's corny
He's
AF.
corny. And what's bothersome is most of the negativity that went to Ken during Final Tribal is the fact that he was loyal and then he flipped, and it's like, how can you do this? And it's like,
But truly sitting, I don't think anyone should have made the choice to sit next to Dave. He was so endearing. So, I mean,
Yeah,
if that's what you're referring to, flipping on Dave, like,
yeah. I think Jessica asked him the question, like, "Oh yeah, you were loyal. You said you were
and
loyal."
that was his closest, Jess was his closest ally, like, when they were together. They were like a solid duo. She gave him the advantage, the
Yeah,
legacy, and she still was like,
yeah.
hypocrite.
Why'd you flip? Question. Most of the time, it seems like if you want to make a big move, you get to make that move. You become a target, and you're voted out shortly after. Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. Like I said, Tony and Kagayan is really the only person that is able to do this and is able to survive long enough to continue to do it continuously until he gets to the end and he wins easily. I think past Tony, the only person I can think about that was like making move after move after move is probably like D. And even D was not in full like making crazy moves every round, but D was doing a lot during her season. But it's very hard to be the person that pulls off this crazy move and not get immediately targeted afterward. And I want to talk about that aspect with the trust clusters slash the fluid gameplay that we're now talking about, the evolution of the game, as we hear a lot in the season 2, where I feel like that's also a misconception because games can be fluid and second chances. The game is fluid and there are voting blocks. Do you know what the final 3 still ends up being? It's the final it's Tasha and Jeremy who have been together since the beginning, and then Spencer who joined the alliance late. So it's not like we get a final 3 of people that have just sort of worked together, but not really. We still get a final 3 of people that have actually, and it's the same thing here, where yes, the game is very fluid throughout the merge. Everyone's jockeying for position. We still get 3 people that have voted pretty much the same the entire merge. So it's not like the game has moved on so far from the beginning of the show that at the end of the day it still becomes who am I good with? And Brett is the person that is saying that. And we're going back to this again because I hate it so much, but like this, do you feel like there is a way to play a fluid game and have zero actual tight people or tight person? You don't have to answer.
That's a tough question. I'm kind of shocked. Wait, okay. So we're comparing fluidity versus deep trust.
Yeah, it's more of I feel like the ultimate fluid game would be someone that has no connections to anyone and just votes willy-nilly and still makes to the end, which I mean, someone correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think that has ever happened.
That's what I was thinking. I can't think of any player who's like that
Tony
because
and
you have to,
Kagayan.
I don't think you can. Like, I don't think you can get far enough to make it to finale and get through all those tribals. You don't have anyone who can really trust you and want to work with you. Like, you have to save your flip-flopping for special occasions that you can talk your way out of. So I don't know that we've really seen someone do a ton of flip-flopping, not have any kind of strong alliance and make it super far and still play a game that I would buy in a finale. Like, they would have to sit in front of the most bitter jury against two people that everyone hates to just be like, well, at least I never made a promise. I never made a final two with any. I never made an alliance. Like, you know, like, and that's just not realistic, I don't think.
Not. And it's wild to me that
Ken was great on mute.
yes, he's like I said. I understand why people might find him as a pretty person. I get it.
He does nothing for me. I don't.
Yeah, as a straight, I'm just like I know, but even then, it's like I just Ken just came off as very pretentious this season. I would,
Yeah.
and so like, and it's going back to the gameplay. I felt like the gameplay was too. They were trying to big brain it so much that it became just like, okay, well, yeah, obviously you're gonna get voted out next because you just pulled off this move. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Period. Adam at Final Trial was like, yeah, I have the three. He's using the shield strategy. The three biggest threats are sitting in front of me. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna let them take each other out because at that point it's me, Hannah, and Ken. And in that situation, yeah, I think that was the prime final three for Adam, and I also think it was the prime final three for Hannah. There is no prime final three for Ken. There really isn't. There is no prime final three for Ken. He's screwed. Period. I don't think there is a single final three that Ken can sit at merge wise, because even if he sits next to like Taylor, who sucks, and I don't know, Sunday, I feel like Sunday probably wins pretty handily. I feel like Taylor probably gets his douchey alliance votes, but that's probably it. We're gonna move on because I do want to talk about that tribal. It's Michaela, but just that tribal in general. So you said at the beginning of this that Michaela, because you watched Game Changers first, Michaela was the character that stood out to you the most. I have my opinions on how Michaela is portrayed in Game Changers, which I will talk about tomorrow. But today, Michaela is one of my favorite players on the season. I always am dreading the episode that she goes home because it's like she doesn't make the merge, and I think it's such a. I have thoughts. What did you think? Obviously, what did you think of Michaela this season? And we won't talk about the actual tribal yet, but what did you think of that series of events that led to that tribal that we are going to get to?
I just think Michaela is one of the most fun players to watch of all time. I think both. I know this is not the Game Changers episode, so I won't say too much. But I think being introduced to her on Game Changers, I kind of clocked right away that the way she was behaving on the island didn't really match up to the things that people were saying in their confessionals that made the edit. There was a mismatch to me. I felt like she was being misconstrued a little bit. So that's why I was very curious and wanted to go backwards and watch Millennials versus Gen X and see why she made it to Game Changers. And I was just dazzled from the beginning. I mean, she's helping another tribe during challenges because they have, you know, a millennials minority on one tribe and the other tribe has, there's three of you. If you can't figure out how to work together, you deserve to go home. We don't get a lot of outspoken, like, very kind of unorthodox, like, kind of gameplay like that. Like, very, very fun to watch. And
She's
the
a
fact that
competitor.
she was only trying to help her alliance get further and explain to them how strategy works, and that's the reason she got voted out, is
She
so
was woman-splaining
tragic.
to
It's so
these men.
horrible to me. I need to see her back for another season. She might be my number one pick for who I want to see on 50.
Oh,
I just
you're
adore
jumping the
her.
gun a little bit there, but okay.
Huh?
I know you're jumping the gun a little bit there because that's
I know,
at
I
the
know,
end of
I
the
know, I know,
class.
I know, I know. But I
Uh,
just adore her, and just seeing her get voted out because she's so competent is
she,
like
Because she's a smart woman. She's a smart black woman, and that's what I mean. That's probably not the case, but I love Michaela this season. I think that Michaela, once again, everything with her and Figgy, the fact that they don't like each other in the show, it's shown that they don't like each other, but she's still working with her.
Yeah.
The fact that she's just very no bullshit. Even the emotional moment where she has after she starts the fire.
That's one of my
the
most
swamp tribe.
inspiring Survivor moments. I love that moment so much. It's one that I pull up sometimes when I'm just having a rough moment. Like her whole doing it after two other people had, I think, tried and failed, and her finally getting it, and then the kind of impromptu confessional. I love the just on the path confessionals where it's spur of the moment. They're not on the rock by the beach with the. I love the spur of the moment confessional where she shares about her life and how much.
Yeah,
like she's had to rely on herself and her own fighting for things, and I just love that moment in Millennials versus Gen X, and I feel like. Again, it's just one of those moments where they lean into people who we can relate to more than people who are just there for like a circus, like just for, like D-list celebrity entertainment. That's not the vibe I get from anyone on this cast. And that vulnerable moment with Michaela just touches my heart.
Yeah,
Pull it up all the
really
time.
Does. It's such a great moment, and I think it's 2 episodes for her boot episode, or it might actually be her boot episode. I don't remember. But then, yes, like you said, we get to the point where even like the penultimate episode, or the penultimate episode before she gets voted out, where Hannah's like trying to like be neurotic, and Michaela's basically just telling her to say, "Hey, shut the fuck up," so I can do this. Michaela's a competitor. She's a competitor, and she hates to lose. She hates to lose to the point where she will have her tatas come out in a challenge to make sure that she wins a challenge.
I love it. That was so funny.
She will, she will shush Hannah, Hannah posted a letter that Michaela sent her after Michaela got voted out the other day, basically saying, hey, good luck in the game and all this, and here's my phone number. And it was, but like she's telling someone that has that type of connection, Hannah saying, I did not do that when Michaela gets voted out. It's like they have that connection to still tell her, hey, shut the fuck up so I can do this. It's just the competitor and her mansplaining to Will and Jay and Hannah the plan going into the merge and why it does not matter who we vote out between Brett and Sunday. I was just like, yeah. When I watched it the first time, I'm like, I didn't think she was going to win at that point, but I'm like, yeah, that's your strategic threat right now because she's laying it out for you. If you just follow this plan, you'll probably at least make Final Four, Final Five. And then we get Jay and Will in the woods, and it's Jay that it's shown. It's shown that it's Jay that it's like, oh man, Michaela's smart, and she's really good at challenges. And Will piggybacks off of it. Now, I have my thoughts on Will anyway. So, like, the fact that Ronald Reagan is his hero is like, oh, of course he's going to vote out Michaela. But
I did not know that. Why? That's news for me. Ew.
But
Ew.
they decide.
How recent was that? How recently did he say that? Was he 18 when he said it? That's still too old to say that.
Yeah, he's 18 and he's saying that shit.
It's too old.
But they're running through it and they're saying, oh well, she's loyal and like she's with us and she will, and it's like, yes, that's all that matters. Like, but she's strategic and she can win challenges. It's like, who gives a shit? Because if
she's planning to keep them safe. Like,
she will stay with you.
Worry about her later.
She has shown. Even though she hates Figgy, she still voted with y'all anyway. And so I was trying to big brain that and was like, oh, well, they voted her out because she was happy that Figgy got voted out. Because that is the episode that she was laughing at the fact that Figgy got voted out and they got pissed off and they voted her out.
Which is funny. It's just funny content.
Fuck Figgy. I'm sorry. I'm sure.
No, I actually enjoyed Figgy in the Squid Game.
I'm sure she's very nice.
Challenge. Like, I have no ill will toward Figgy or anyone on this cast. Like, to be clear, but no, her roasting of Figgy is just so chef's kiss.
Michaela working with those pebbles, do you think that was the real reason she was targeted? I think it's a part of the reason she was targeted. I mean, both of them say, "Oh yeah," the fact that she explained, and it's like that's not her explaining it to them is something that they should have just figured out on
It's
their own.
basic number.
It's
It's
yeah,
arithmetic
it's
stuff.
not that hard
But
to figure out.
if there were other reasons, I feel like it we weren't shown them intentionally because of that surprise factor that they were leaning into with the edit. So there I feel like there very well could have been other factors. Maybe it wasn't so a very last minute thought just because of the pebbles and the shells, but if there were other reasons, we certainly didn't see them because production wanted to surprise us and hurt our feelings in the elimination.
Yeah, and Jay, I mean, Jay and Will both end up on the bottom by like this time next episode.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the case if Michaela stays. But because she's gone, all of a sudden Will, Jay, Taylor, Sunday, Brett. Well, Sunday and Brett are usually in a better spot than Jay is. Jay is basically fighting for his life once the merge hits until he finally gets voted out. I don't think that's the case if Michaela is there because the person that Michaela is closest to in Game Changers is Sari, and we all
Yeah.
know what happened to Sari in that game. Stay tuned tomorrow because I hate that. It makes no sense for them to vote out Michaela there. But so we get to that tribal, and you know they're very preachy. Like, hey, we're a tight group, and the five of us, whoever's left, are going to be very tight going out of this. And the fact that Michaela was shocked by the first vote she got, when in reality, like, okay, yes, Brett and Sunday are probably going to vote two on one of y'all, and it's you. When the second one comes in, she's still like, okay. The third, where she turns and she looks at Jay and she looks at Brett, it's like, yep, I'd probably do the exact same thing. And you know what? To his credit, Jay, hey, did you do that? And Jay says, yeah, I did it. And it's a badass moment. I'm not gonna lie, because like he could have just tried to, sorry, I did it, and he just stays very
He
stone
said it
faced.
with his chest,
He
and I
said
have
it.
to respect that.
I
He wasn't
He didn't chump his way out of that. He said it with a straight face. Hannah saying, "I did not do that," and Michaela getting up, almost forgetting her shoes, and oh, you fucked up something good, Jay, and bouncing is it is probably my favorite. I hate saying it like that. It's my favorite vote out, but like not because it's Michaela, because I love her. It's just more everything that goes. It's the spectacle, I guess, of it.
It's a
Um,
great final tribal council. Like, and this season had a lot of really good final tribal councils. Or not final. Sorry, what am I saying? It was a really good tribal council, and
for the
this
person
season
that's
had
gone,
a
yeah.
lot of good ones. And that one was very, very good. And something that I heard after I watched this season was that Michaela hadn't watched a whole lot of Survivor seasons before she went on the show, so she didn't know that some of the moves she was making and some of her reactions were a little bit unusual or unorthodox. She was very unfiltered, and she didn't know that was like out of the ordinary. And I love that. I love that she was just herself without worrying about how this is going to like come across on camera. Like she let it out, and I loved it.
I mean, shit, it got her
And she
back
did the
for
same
another
thing in Game
season.
Changers
Yeah, it
at
got
tribal
her back.
councils. Like,
It got her back for another season. And I think that because this cast is very good, and the fact that they had two people back from this cast, one being probably the most strategic person on the season, and the other one probably being the biggest character of the season, even though she doesn't even make the merge, is a testament to Michaela as both a character and a game player. And yes, I'm gonna shit all over how she is portrayed in Game Changers tomorrow, and I think it's bullshit how she's portrayed. But
you'll see me
whatever.
in the comments.
I appreciate that. But I love Michaela this season, and I think that once again, she just encapsulates everyone as a whole this season, like for the most part, this season is very good when it comes to the casting. Where it's harder, and I've said this for the last couple of weeks, it's very easy to pick out who the recruits are and who are the people that are the fans. This is one of the seasons where, like, outside of like Taylor, I can't really figure. Oh, and a lot of the Gen X people, are definitely recruits, but it's very hard to like pinpoint because I didn't know about the Michaela thing until right now about that. So like, it's very hard to pick and choose who is the recruit and who are the super fans outside of the obvious super fans of like Adam and Zeke and Hannah. Oh my God, Jeff Probst just used my phrase trust because I'm like, Hannah, I love you so much. Question: what do y'all think of Jay's double fake idol? What do you think of Jay's double fake idol play? I thought it was mean, but I liked it because of what he did to Michaela. Is it karma? I'm assuming you're talking about the one that David hid the fake idol, and I thought it was awesome. And I thought it was more awesome because of the way that Jay reacted in the moment of he just got caught. Like, because I don't think that scene is edited at all. I think that we got the actual Jay moment of him realizing what has happened and him looking up and like, oh, you guys got me, you bastards, this, that, and the other. It's one of the moments that makes me love this season, like towards the end, where it's like, okay, maybe something at the end happens that I hate. No, because that happens, I think, finale or once again, penultimate or finale, where it's like, that's such a fun moment because Jay takes it so as a game. He takes it as a game move. He doesn't say, fuck you guys for making me look stupid. He takes it as, that's crazy that you can. And Probst even says that is a work of art. And it's like, yeah, it looked real.
It was one of the best fake hidden immunity idols we've seen, because we've seen some sticks. That one was very well made, and the fact that he made it in the dark and just planted it right away, and it was found right away. The immunity idols really were like a character of their own this season. The way they were played was so fun, and the fact that there was a fake one, it just makes it even better. It was one of the highlights for me rewatching it.
Yeah, David's face,
like you were saying, it didn't end in an ugly way.
No, it
makes it fun.
Even like when Randy played his fake idol in Gabon, I mean, obviously he doesn't take it as well as Jay does, but like it's funny because of Crystal and Sugar laughing at everything that's happening. Here, Jay takes it on the nose, and like you brought up earlier, it's because, and the fact that a lot of this cast, at least optics wise, like after the show, it seems like they all get along very well. I think that is like, we see that there, like the fact that he does not take it personally. And I think the most pissy person on the season, like merge wise, is probably Brett. But Brett still has his wholesome moments. He's
kind of funny too. Like,
yeah,
I love his unfiltered moments. He's funny.
He's a mortician, and Hannah's just like, he's a cop. He's a cop.
Cop thing was so funny to me. And then who was it? Was it Taylor or Jay? I can't remember who was like, yeah, if he were in Florida, I would totally see myself running away from him. It's so funny the way they all immediately, like, the cops pretending not to be cops will never not be funny to me.
It was only one idol that he, at the night that Jay went home, he played one fake idol. I was going off the comment. He played one fake idol and no other ones, right? Yeah. But where was I going with this? I don't know. What was I just saying?
We were talking about idols and the fake idol, and now I'm off. I got a little bit off track as well.
Okay. Oh, Brett.
Brett. Yeah, that's right.
Brett talking to Zeke about how that was one of the only genuine Millennials Gen X moments that I felt during the season, was them talking about both being gay men.
Yeah.
And Brett saying, I come from a different time, and like the people that are close to me, they know, they don't care. But like when I came out macho guys, like I just reverted back to doing this. And Zeke's like, I've never thought about trying to keep it, under wraps, is the most genuine Millennials Gen X moment of the entire season. Because I don't think that production. I mean, if I find out later that production told them to do that, I'm really pissed off because it feels real. It
I
doesn't feel
agree.
forced like a lot of the other stuff that happens this season as far as the theme. But yes, Hannah clocking the fact that he's a cop, and then at Final Tribal where oh God, he went to Oklahoma. He was Brett's number one.
Oh,
Oh my
was it
God,
Chris or some?
Chris
Okay.
says he's. Oh, I'm not a coach. I'm a lawyer. And Hannah goes, yeah, I clocked that too. And I bought it. I feel like she clocked both of those people as what they really were. I think that, overall, this is it is a fun season. And I hate saying it because I want people to be wrong because fans are stupid.
You know what it is, though? Ultimately, is I feel like this is when they started phasing out the boomers, and boomers were what were always dragging Survivor down. So the fact that it's by title, no boomers allowed, it's kind of what it kind of pushed the season in a more wholesome direction because
Yeah, I mean,
we're not.
it is a very wholesome season. There is, if you were to look at like the season as far as like who are the villains of this season, I feel like Jay would be considered a villain, but like a fun villain.
Yeah,
He's going to have a heart.
agree.
I feel like Chris even would probably be looked at. Chris or Brett would be looked at as villains. You could even make a case for David being a villain, or ish maybe. The only villains this season that like I obviously can't vibe with are Figtails, because they are the actual worst. Figtails is so bad, and I hate them.
Doesn't it remind you of being like young and fun and dumb though? Like, there's no
No,
nostalgia factor for you there? Oh, okay. Well, I mean,
no,
I think it's terrible gameplay, and the way they were both convinced that it just wouldn't be a problem, it
no.
beats me. But
When
the
when
naivete, the optimism
when
brings a
Fig
little
is
bit of
coming
nostalgia
out,
to my heart.
when she's coming out to the swap tribe, he's like, "Oh yeah, Jess, like me and Taylor," and she's like, "You really, no way." And I was like, "Oh Ken, oh yeah, me and Taylor," and he's like, and he has this confession where he's like, "Oh yeah, these kids don't know that I've been around the block." I'm like, "Ken, I believe you've been around the block. Like, you don't have to convince me, man. You're a male model. Fucking relax." um, so I mean, we're gonna start to wrap up. I'm trying to think of any of the big ones that we didn't touch on. I do want to really touch on Zeke again, as far as like, I think Zeke's a great game player this season. I think that Zeke is a great narrator, and I know I mentioned that, like the fact that there are so many great narrators this season. There's a lot of great confessionals this season. Period. Obviously, I think that Zeke is going to run into the exact same problem next season, where he just like he's over strategizing,
Yeah.
and Andrea Belke has her confession where she says, "Oh, you're horrible at this game, and I hope to know you never," and all that. And it's like, oh, you don't really buy that, but like I get it. Um, I feel like Zeke is. I think encapsulates this era of Survivor more than almost anyone else, as far as he's making big moves, he's trying to do this, he's trying to do that, and I appreciate that as a super fan, like that the fact that he went out there and was just trying to do a bunch of crazy shit. But I feel like that Zeke is always destined to lose right around mid merge every time, because he's always going to get clocked as that threat. And he's happily married now to Mateo from Superstore, so it's all good. Outside of that, I have nothing about the season to touch on before we get to our final questions. Any final thoughts on the actual season?
Um, I will. We didn't talk about the winner as much as I thought we would, just because the whole cast is so stacked. But I will give Adam his flowers and say I do think he's a very deserving winner, and that is something else I think pushed the needle further into the direction of casting people who are more relatable. I mean, he's kind of a game bot, but he is like also kind of an everybody. He's not.
He's a
Anyway,
judge.
uh,
He's a judge like me. Yes, I get it.
yeah, and sharing backstories is something that was kind of fresh and new in the 30s. And he did play a very, very, very good game. Upon rewatching, I did really like his game. Hannah also played a really good game. I'm not, but I wanted to give Adam his flowers, as well as Zeke. You were mentioning how to piggyback off of what you were saying, I do think he's another player who really pushed the needle in a certain direction in terms of strategic gameplay, the way they really have leaned into casting super fans and casting people who know the game backwards and forwards. Zeke was kind of a game changer in that sense, in the way that he really played a strategy heavy game back to back. So I do think he was. Again, we can talk. Well, I'm not on the Game Changers episode, but like who was a game changer and who wasn't. I think Zeke does fit the mold of, like, you could say he was a game changer because the direction of the games did start taking a new direction toward the more strategic super fan direction, and I like it.
Question: Who played better, Adam Klein or I'm assuming that's Nick Wilson? That's hard, and the reason that's hard for me is Winners at War is in what 7 days, 6 days, something like that. Nick Wilson is one of the people that I was like, I didn't need him for Winners at War. You could have brought back another male winner. Adam Klein is actually in that list, and that's not a knock on Adam. Like I do like Adam as a winner and all of that. Adam being on Winners at War, it's like, okay, what about Chris from Vanuatu or someone like that? But as far as who between the two, who I won't say play better because that's subjective. For me, I prefer Adam over Nick, but that's probably a lot of bias from outside the game as well. Like that's I when I go do the David vs Goliath season in 4 days ish, I might feel that Nick is a better winner, but like for right now, sitting here, it's like, oh yeah, I prefer Adam. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I kind of just agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
It's Adam. Yeah,
Okay.
I feel that way as well. I do think his reappearance on Winners at War was a little bit. I mean, his appearance on Millennials versus Gen X, there was just so much like lightning and magic into what he was doing. His experience as a whole, it was just not replicable to have the same kind of magic be repeated. Whereas that was possible for some of the other winners at War. So like, I could have done without seeing him again, actually, personally as well.
Yeah. Um, I okay. So I'm gonna give the season a 4.25 out of 5. I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it in between. Oh my god, this is a lot harder. I'm gonna put it in between the Amazon and Marquesas. I'm going to put it in between Amazon and Marquesas, but it's going to 4.25 out of 5. All right, so the final two questions. Question one: we won't count Adam because he came back for Winners at War. So we've had Zeke and Michaela, and that's it. Oh, and David. Were they the right three people? And we're not talking about 50 right now, but were they the right three people? And should there have been other people that could have been brought back between this season and 46?
I really think this is one of the seasons that just had so much magic that they could have brought back almost anyone. And I don't think there would have been a bad returner actually from Millennials versus Gen X. Well, actually, let me say that. I will say not Paul. Paul is played out. Some of the early boots, we just didn't, I can't really know for sure. But honestly, starting at like, even before Michaela a little bit, like, there really aren't bad picks for returners. Like Lucy was kind of fun. I mean, Jessica
She had a
going out
fun
on a
one
rock
episode
draw
story
always
arc.
deserved what?
I said Lucy had a fun one episode story arc.
I bet we could have had more. I just feel like there were even some early boots that just we could have had more. There aren't bad picks, I think, for returners, except for the one that I mentioned. That was kind of played out in my opinion. And actually, maybe Figgy, we could give her a break as well. And same the whole so Figtails plus Paul are the only ones that I would have been like they didn't really. I would
Because
not see why
Mari
they would
was
get invited back. But
Mari was fun.
anyone else, huh?
I
What?
enjoyed Mari, so like yeah.
So yeah, I do think Jess should have gotten a second chance at some point because she was so robbed. I mean, oh, that would be the one that didn't get a second chance that I think should have.
I feel like so of the three that we've gotten back, or what did I? Oh, three, not including Adam. I do agree with Michaela. I do agree with Zeke. I absolutely agree with David. I don't agree with the season that David came back for. Not because I like Edge of Extinction. I feel like David would have been more. I think it would have been better for him to come back to an all returnee season.
I agree.
I like even if you swap him with Michaela and have Michaela play Edge of Extinction, and you have David play.
I've never thought of that.
Ancient.
That's an interesting thought experiment. That would have been good.
Yeah, because I mean, there's. I don't know. I feel like David there, and we're gonna get to that when we get to the season 50 question. I feel like his storyline, and someone said in the comments earlier, I feel like his storyline still has legs. And sadly, I don't think that those legs will ever continue because he is a writer for a television show now. But like, I think that his storyline could have a act 3, and whether he wins or not really doesn't matter. As far as we just need an act 3 to his story. It seems like the chat pretty much agrees with you as far as wanting Jess back, which is, I mean, she looked very hot during Final Tribal. But
I was thinking that I was thinking the exact same thing, and I didn't remember that from my first watch, but I was like stunned.
Sunday. And Michelle
Jay is a very
wearing her
fun player.
like
Someone shouted out Jay in the chat, I think I saw, and Jay is a fun player. I was
yeah,
more impressed by him on the rewatch than I was the first time around because I think I just associated him so hard with Figtails. But once he gets rid of them, he's a really fun player to watch.
Yeah, I like Jay. I didn't bring this up, but Michelle's outfit during the finale, where she looks like a fucking demon, is very fun, I guess. But Michelle's whatever. So I would say that Jay, Jess, Hannah, Dave's already come back. I think that might be it. Anyway, season 50. Season 50. If you had to pick 1 to 2 people, who would you pick?
Well, if it could only be one, it would always be Michaela. If I could add one more, this is just like a reward challenge where it's a surprise. If I could pick one more. Oh, it's tough. Who would be fun to see nowadays, like in the new era with the changes? I think Michaela would be so fun to watch with the new changes, and who knows what they have in store for 50. It might have to be Hannah. I might have to just pick 2 millennial women, but I think seeing Hannah again would be really, really fun. I mean, I feel like she was very forward thinking about the game when she played Millennials versus Gen X. It would be very fun to see her, a few years later, more grown up. That would have to be my top 2.
So this is the first season, the 33 days of this, where we can actually start talking realistically about these people might actually show up on 50. And having said that, yes, Michaela has had a second chance. David has had a second chance. Zeke has had a second chance. I don't think we're going to get any winners on 50. For me, if I had to have a short list that I'm going to cut down while we're here, it would be Michaela, David, Hannah, and Zeke. And Jay. I'll put Jay in there. I feel like we have to cut out David because he's a writer. If you were to pick between the 4, if I feel like Michaela's story, if Michaela's story ends in Game Changers, it sucks because of the episode that she got voted out in, where we don't understand why she got voted out. I think that if we got Jay back, that would be I would get that, and I would actually be pretty much on board with it. If we got Hannah back, I'd be biased because it's Hannah. And who's the other person that I mentioned? Who's the other person that I mentioned?
Can we talk about Zeke?
Oh, and Zeke. I feel like if we were to get Zeke back for a third time, which I don't, just based off of things that I feel like if we got Zeke back for a third time, I think that would be a fun third act to his story. Can Hannah do where Aubrey fumbled? So Hannah is in that Aubrey archetype. We get Gabby and David versus Goliath that also fall into that archetype. My thing is, though, I feel like they're two different players gameplay wise. Yes, they fall into the archetype as far as looks and the neurotic nature and all that. But as players, I feel like Hannah is better than Aubrey. Hot take. I feel like she is. But I feel like as far as stories needing to be completed in season 50, I feel like you can do Michaela because of how she was portrayed on Game Changers. I think you can go Zeke and see if he can not be overly strategic. I feel like you could do Hannah and to say, hey, this is your second chance, and you're not sitting next to Adam. And you can do Jay of, hey, we didn't have a villain that first time, and you were kind of portrayed as the one, but like here, you can just be yourself. And I follow him on a couple of the social medias, and he seems like a really fun guy. So I wouldn't be hurt watching any of them play again. Hannah fighting a lot of people for her archetype, especially since we still have 340s left. Yes, that is the problem that we're going to run into, is like because they're still going to do archetypes.
Yeah.
So like,
my friend, I hate to do this, but I absolutely need to visit the Coconut Grove or whatever they call it. Do I have time to maybe step away for 2 minutes? Are there more comments you could answer while I'm away? Is this inappropriate?
No, we'll just head out. It's fine. We were closing up anyway. We're just closing up anyway. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. I can wait.
But Erica, thank you so much for joining me today. I've been really looking forward to this one.
Thank you so much for having me. I've never been on a podcast before. Look at her.
We wore Jeff shirts. I will be back tomorrow night for Game Changers. Oh God.
You'll see me in the comments.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone that was in the comments tonight. Thank you to everyone that continues to support me through all of this. I'm almost done. Thank you. And we will see you guys on the other side.